Hi everyone, I'm super excited to announce you that this is a whole 1 hour Angular mock interview session. This particular session covers different Angular concepts like routing, lazy loading, dependency injection services, ng lifecycle hooks, directives and so on. I hope this would be very beneficial for all those who are planning to brush up the skills in Angular, who are planning to attend upcoming Angular interviews. So please watch without skipping, and all the best for your interview. Thanks a lot. So let's get started. Hi, I hope you're ready for today's interview. So in today's interview, we'll consider topics related to Angular routing. Okay, so I hope you're ready with that. Yeah, sure. So can you please let me know what is Angular routing? What is the concept behind this routing, or how can you define routing in Angular? Okay, so routing allows you to move from one part of the application to another part, or from one view to another view. Okay, yeah, so it is a separate module in Angular. We have an Angular / router, so that is a library package that is available in Angular. So we have that particular Angular, and we will take that router outlet. There will be a router outlet directive. So in that router outlet directive, we will be providing those details. Yeah. Okay, got it. So can you please, so in this, but you have your code open. In this particular component, you have a parent component. So can you implement a routing in this particular, so the parent, when the user hits this particular parent, so the parent component has to be loaded. Currently it is not getting loaded, right? So we that is the requirement. You have to implement routing in this particular project. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I have my parent component. So I have already added that into the app module. So the parent component loading should work. So for implementing loading, I will be adding an app hyphen. I will be adding a routing module. First, I will be adding a routing module .ts. So in this, so I'll be creating a class of app routing module, and this class I will be decorating with ng module attribute, and in this I need to implement the routing module. I need to import and export the routing module. So I need to define the path. So for that, actually I will be using a routes array. So in Angular, router provides a routes array. In this, actually I will be providing so the routes has been imported from Angular router. So this is an array, and in that actually there will be a JSON object where we need to define the path. So if the user enters the parent route in the URL, then I need to define that the parent component needs to be loaded. So okay, so I have defined the routes now. Once the routes has been defined, so I need to import that particular routes in the router module. So there is an in the ng module, it provides an imports feature. So in the imports feature, what are the modules and other components that needs to be imported, so that needs to be mentioned. So Angular router provides a router module. In that router module, there is a for root method. So it would be available throughout the root of the application, from the root of the application. In this, I will be providing the routes array that we created. And also we need to export this router module so that it is available throughout the application. So throughout the application, so I defined the routing module. Okay, so some error is there. Export. Okay, so the class has not been declared. So I have created this app routing module. Now what I need to do is in the app module, I need to import this app routing module. Otherwise it will not work. Okay, so I defined that app routing module. Now what we need to do is in the app.component.html, so I need to define the router, which I mentioned earlier, router outlet directive I need to mention. So now you can see, right? So also as soon as I mentioned router outlet, parent works. So if I didn't provide parent, so then it will go into the home page, if I provide parent, then it will go into the parent root. Sorry for that. So like this I will be implementing the router. So it's loading. Yeah, so you can see this parent works is available in the parent component.html. So whatever I provide over here, so that will be reflecting in the so test parent. Yeah, so test parent is reflecting now. So this is the way I'll be implementing. Okay, that's great. So now you have your parent component. Okay, so now if you hit parent URL, so yeah, so now if you hit the parent URL, so you will be getting the parent. Okay, that is working well and good. Now what happens if you provide instead of the parent root, if you provide any other root, like say for example child, what will happen? Yeah, so if I hit child over here, so it will throw an error because child root is not configured. So we need to configure that child root, and if I hit that child URL, you can see here it cannot match any roots. So it will be giving this particular error. So either we need to redirect to parent or home page as and when required. Okay, but that is working in case of child. If you configure it for child, it will work. But for any other roots apart from parent, you are giving some XYZ or test URL. So how that will behave? How you will be handling those scenarios in your application? Okay, yeah, got it. So you are asking like if I provide similar to this roots parent array, I need to provide if the user is providing child, then what I will do is I will be redirecting that to home page, that is app component. Okay, okay, app component is redirect to parent. Okay, so in right now I have configured it for a child. So when I hit the URL for child, it will be redirecting that to parent. So this is one way we can do, but if there are many other routes apart from child, there are many other routes. So in that case, actually we need to implement the wildcard route. So in the path we will be mentioning, so this is the way we will be implementing wildcard route. So in this redirect to so this way we will be providing. So if I am providing like any test URL, it will be redirecting to the home page. Yeah, so this is the way I will be implementing. So for wildcard route, this is called wildcard route. So for any other routes apart from parent and child, I will be redirecting to the home page, saying that so this star denotes for the wildcard route. Any route that correspond, any other route you can provide here. So that will be redirected to the home page. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Yeah. So now what you need to do is, okay. So can you paste this wildcard? Does that order matter over here in the routing? So you have given parent, child, and this wildcard. Can you give this wildcard to the parent so it will work the same way? No. So if I provide, so this order is very important. So I forgot to mention that. So this order is very important. So once I provide this wildcard over here, right? So all the routes it will be considering it as wildcard. So the parent, it will not consider it as parent. So parent also will be considered as a wildcard. So now the parent route will not work. So wildcard will take the precedence over parent. So if I provide parent now, so then it will actually redirect to the home page only. It will not redirect to the parent. So right now I am hitting the parent, so it will not get loaded. Yeah, you can see here it has been redirected to the home page. Okay, good, that's great. Okay, so right now you have two components, parent and child. Okay, Now as per the current implementation, the user needs to hit this particular URL like parent, and the user needs to hit the child. How can from parent, how can you redirect the user to the child? How can you implement that? Similar way, how can you redirect the user from the child to the parent? Once the user reaches to the child, the user needs to be redirected back to the parent. How can you achieve that? Okay, yeah, okay. So right now I am in parent. Okay, right now I am in parent, and you want me to redirect to the child, right? Okay. So router module actually provides an router link attribute. Okay, so you can say router link directive. So here we have a router link. So in that actually we need to provide that particular route. So currently in this particular scenario I need to redirect the user back to child. So I have provided the child route, and in the button I will be providing redirect to child, and I will be closing this particular button. Okay, so I created a button over here. So similar to this, I will be creating a button. So if I click on this redirect to child, so okay, now it is in the child. So in the child also I will create a button. Okay, so in the child also I will create a button. So here I will be saying that it is a parent, and so redirect to parent. So I created that. So you can see here redirect to parent. So as soon as I click that, based on this router link attribute, so it is like it will go to the parent route. So if I click on this redirect to parent, so you can see here the route is also getting updated. So I can go back and forth over here. So this is the way within the page, if the user wants to move from one route to another route, so this is the way I will be creating the routes. So redirect to parent and redirect to child. So this we can achieve through the router link directive. Okay, so with this we will be wrapping up the current interview session for this router. So there are many advanced concepts that needs to be discussed, so that we will be doing in the upcoming session. So it was a great time talking to you. Thank you. All the best for your future. Thanks a lot. Hi, hope you're ready. So let's get started today. So we'll take interview questions based on concepts regarding directives. So I hope you are aware about directives in Angular, right? Yeah. So can you please let me know what is a directive and what they are used for? So directive is a important feature in Angular. So it helps us to manipulate the document object model DOM. So you can change the appearance, behavior, or layout of a DOM element using these directives. Okay. So can you please let me know, are there any different types of directives in Angular? Yeah, so in Angular we have like three types of directive. One is the component directive, and the second one is the structural directive, and the third one is the attribute directive. Okay, so can you please explain in bit detail? Yeah, sure. So component directive, so basically component, the basic building block of Angular. So it is also a directive, but it has a template within that. So that is the speciality for the component directive. So it is having it is a directive with a template. And then we have the structural directives. So structural directives actually change the DOM layout, the document object model layout would be changed using the structured directive. So it either adds or removes the DOM elements. So some of the basic examples are ng if, ng for, ng switch. So all those are like structural directives. They will be actually adding or removing the DOM layout, and we will be representing the structural directive using an asterisk symbol. Okay, and then we have the attribute directives. So basically in the attribute directive, so these directives are used to change the appearance or behavior of an element. Some of the examples that we use in our daily usage in Angular, it is ng model, which is actually the two-way binding, and then we have the ng class, and then we have the ng style. So ng class actually it will be it is used to add or remove the class CSS classes from an HTML element. Similarly, for adding the style properties, then we can use the ng style. Okay, yeah, it's great. So can you please, as the code is open here, right? So can you please show how we can achieve the different types of directive? Okay, so you can see here, right? As I mentioned, so component is a directive. So as we have already created component, so this is a directive. So in this, each directive will be having a selector, and there will be style. But so for only for the component directive, we will be having the template URL. So and if you want to refer this particular component in other component HTML, so then we will be using this selector. So same is the case with the directive. So if you want to use the directive in any other area, then you have to refer it to the selector. So this is regarding the component directive. Now I will be showing you regarding the structural directive. So for showing the structural directive, I have two variables. So one is the eShow. It is a boolean variable, and it is initialized as true. And I have a data. So data, I have JSON data. So it is having first name and last name. I have a 3 sets of data. And I have in the HTML, I have created a show height button. So it is like a toggle button. So once the user clicks on the change show, so the eShow value will be toggled between true and false. So this is a basic HTML. Now I will be showing how the structural directive would be implemented in this particular component. So for that, so I have the eShow variable. So I will be creating a div. So this div will be visible only based on the eShow variable. So for that, I will be using the ngIf structural directive. So if it is true, then I will be showing this particular section. So inside this particular section, what I will do is I will create another div for implementing the ng4. So how ng4 is implemented is, so as I mentioned, so there will be an asterisk symbol and ng4. Then if you want to implement the data, so let dat of data. So data is the variable that is storing the data. So I will be referring to that. So I will be creating an ng4 on that particular data. So I will be having in this dat all the details would be available. So dat dot first name, and then the hyphen I will be putting. So this is basically doing an interpolation with the TypeScript data. So this has to match with that JSON property. So, okay. So now you can see here all the sets of data, 3 sets of data is already populated here over here. So here actually I will be providing a value saying that so there will be P. So data would be shown based on eShow value. So okay. So now you can see here, yeah, so this particular section would be shown only when the eShow value is true. So now I have already created one button. So in this button actually I will be toggling the value of the eShow value. So as soon as I click the value, click the button, so eShow will be changed to false. So then this particular section would not be visible because we are actually using the ngIf for that. So it is actually, it will be actually hiding that particular DOM. So we can test that out. So if I click on that, so that particular DOM tree has been removed because of the use of ngIf. So if I click again, then again the DOM will be created. So this is how the structural directive would be implemented. Okay, yeah, that's great. Okay, so now we have attribute directive. Okay, so for explaining about attribute directive, so I have a color section. Okay, colors data is there. I have 2 color of red and green, and similar to that I have 2 CSS classes for showing red and green. Okay, so now what we will do is we will be seeing how the attribute directive can be implemented. So for that I have a data. Okay, so I have a colors data, so it will be having 2 values, color red and color green, and similarly I have a CSS red color and green color.
So what I will do is I will be using two attribute directives. One is the ng class and one is the ng style. So for that, for implementing that, so I will be first iterating through the colors data. So for that I will be using the structural directive ng4. Okay, so let call of colors. So in this call I will be having that colors value. Okay, so this is in one div. So now call is holding the colors value, right? So I will be creating another div, okay, where I will be providing the ng style attribute directive. So we will be providing in this way. In this one actually I will be saying that I want to make the background color. Okay, so I have to provide the particular style that I am looking for. Okay, so based on which value, so it is actually looking for which value. So one is I am having that if call dot color is there, then call dot color, okay, else by default red. Okay, so now okay, so by default red. Okay, this also should be one line. Okay, now I will be closing this div. Okay, so here I will be providing call dot color. Okay, so you can see here, so based on the ng style, so for the red color has appeared, and because it will be taking that particular color, okay, call dot color, so it will be taking the red, and if it is green it will take the green. Okay, so this is the way we will be implementing the ng style. So similar to that we can implement the ng class as well. Okay, so here we will be saying so I have just copy pasted that. So instead of this ng style we will be providing ng class. So here the only difference is that we have to provide the class, the corresponding class. So red color, so I am having that as red color, so it is red hyphen color. Okay, so this is red hyphen color. So based on if call dot color equal to red. Okay, so that has become red. Okay, and one more condition I can put. Okay, so I think we have to put it over here itself. Okay, so now it should work. So I didn't mention to provide green over here. Okay, so it has to take the green color. Yeah, so this is the way you can actually put a break over here. So I just mistyped that one. Okay, so then yeah, you can see here. So this is the way I will be implementing ng style in the ng class. So yeah, so this is the attribute directive. So we have covered all the component directives, structural directive and attribute directive. Apart from that we can create custom directive. Okay, yeah, that's great. So you are aware about custom directive as well, right? Okay, so what I will do is I will be wrapping up this directive interview session for today. So we will be covering more advanced directive like host, listener, and there are many advanced concepts in directive, so that will be covering in another session. So it was great. Thanks for your time. All the best. So let's get started for this interview. I hope you're ready. Okay. So in this particular case, I have provided you a Stackblitz link. I think you have already opened it. Great. So the interview is planning to cover some important concepts regarding component communication. I hope you are aware of component communication, right? Component communication basically defines that how parent or a child component, if I have one or two components, how they are related to each other, how the property will flow from one child component to parent and vice versa. So all those things is considered under as a component communication, how they will be transferring the data between one or two components. Okay, great. So the Stackblitz link is having two components, primarily the parent component and the child component, apart from the app component. So these are like basic. In the child component, it is just saying that it is child works, and in parent component also it is saying parent works. Okay, that's it. So now my requirement is I have to in the parent I have to incorporate this child component. How can you achieve that? Okay. So you want this child, whatever is available in the child, to be available in the parent, right? Yeah, correct. So to achieve that, what we will use is, like, in every component we have to define a selector. So in this case, for the child component, the selector is my child. So in the parent component, what we need to do is, like, as an HTML element, we have to provide it as my child. So we will be providing this as my child. Okay. So as soon as I provide this my child, so this particular, the content available in the child will be available to the parent. So for viewing that, so in the router actually we have mentioned it as parent. So we have to get, so right now it is in the home page. So now we have to define the parent. So as soon as we hit the parent, so the child component also would be available over here. So yeah, so you can see here, right? So child works. Okay, that's great. Okay, yeah, this is what I was expecting. Okay, now say for example, I have to pass one data from parent to child. How can I achieve that? Say for example, in child component you are having a title field. Okay, so this child works, so this is a title. Okay, so this title should be appearing as child. How can you achieve that? Okay, so for this title to appear as child, the data needs to be passed from parent. So how we can achieve is that in the child component TypeScript file, I will define a variable, so title as a string. Okay, so title as a string, and this particular variable I will be decorating. So I will be decorating it with at input decorator. So once I decorate this particular, so this needs to be imported from Angular core. So at input decorator, and I am putting it as title. It doesn't appear over here. So now in the parent component, what we need to do is that we have to pass an input value. So we have to pass value from parent component to child component. So here we will provide a child title. Okay, so this is a string and this value is a child. Okay, so once I have this particular child, then in the parent component, so it has to match that input property. So we will be doing a property binding. So this is basically a property binding. So where I will mention it as title, and so here we will be defining whatever we are providing in the child title. Okay, so that we will be providing over here as soon as we provide over here, right? So you can see, so it should be appearing in the similar way as it is earlier where we were having, right? So as soon as the parent gets loaded,
in the child component it will be passing this particular input value to the parent. So you can see here child works. So if I make a change C to caps, so that should be appearing in the child. So this is the way we can actually pass data from the parent to the child using an input decorator. So this input decorator is provided from Angular core. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, this is what I was expecting. Now say for example, based on an event that is available in the child component, we have to do some actions in the parent. So how can you achieve that? Okay, so for that actually, so say for example, if I have a button, so I have a button here, in the button submit data, submit. So during submit, so in the click event, I will be writing a method submit data. So currently this method is not available. Okay, so during the submit data, so what I will do is I will be passing the data from the child to parent. So currently okay, so yeah, so I am planning to create I would be creating a submit data method in the child component. So submit data, and so I created the method, and in this method what I need to do is I need to inform the parent that the submit button is clicked. So for that we have an output property. Okay, so that is provided by Angular core, and here I will be creating is submit button clicked. So it is an event emitter. It should be basically an event emitter. So Angular core provides an event emitter. So here you can say what is the type that needs to be emitted. Okay. So I have created a boolean variable isSubmit. So in this when the user is clicking on submit button, so isSubmit dot I will be emitting an event saying that yes, this is submitted. Okay, so by this way the parent would be able to know that yeah, so if you want the initial value you can put it as false. So now it has emitted a true value. So by this true value it means that in the child component the user has clicked on the submit button. Now in the parent component, so how you have to take it is, so instead of property it would be an event binding. So it is the variable has to match with what we have provided in the output, and based on this particular event so you can say that form submitted or something like that, button submitted, and here you will be getting an $event. So that will actually get the value that has been passed from child. So this form submitted method I had to write over here. Okay, so in the parent component, if I am writing form submitted, and I have got an event from the child component, right? So form submitted, you can put it like right now you know it is a boolean variable, so you can put it as a boolean instead of any, and in the console.log you can actually console the changes. Submit button, value of submit button clicked. So if I put event, so it has to return true. So based on this action you can actually get the value. Okay, so right now if I put a check that, so I will be going to the parent. So right now there is nothing in the console. I have cleared the console. Okay, so now I am going into the parent, and inside the parent what I will do is okay, I will click on the submit button. So you can see here value of submit button clicked is true. So this true has been passed from the child component. So like this actually we will be based on an event, if the user wants to do some action on the parent,
like for this particular example, if there is a form and the user has clicked on submit, so the parent will be notified of this, and based on that particular action we can actually proceed within the parent. So I will be doing it this way. Okay, yeah, that looks great. So input and output properties has been cleared. Okay, so now if you want to do other types of communicate, can you please explain like what are the other ways we can actually communicate? Yeah, so these are the basic two ways where we can communicate between parent and child. Apart from that, we can use observables. We can use observables. We can also use view child properties, template reference variables, and like that also we can communicate between child and parent. Okay, so I am planning to wrap this particular interview for today. Okay, so there are many advanced concepts of component communication, so that we'll plan to cover it later. So be prepared for that. All the best. Thanks for your time. Thanks a lot. Hi, hope you are doing well. Let's get started with the interview. The first question is, what are guards in Angular? Okay. Uh, guards are basically used in Angular to secure the route from performing some actions before navigating into another route or leaving the current route. So guards are also used to prevent unauthenticated users to access a particular route. So we can actually use there are different types of guards that are available in Angular. So we can use those guards to prevent unauthenticated or unauthorized users from accessing our application routes. So this is the basic purpose of guards. Okay, so can you mentioned like there are different types of guards. So can you explain what are the guards that are available in Angular? Yeah, sure. So there are different guards that I have already mentioned. Like a few of them are can activate, can deactivate, resolve guard, can load guard, and can activate child. So these are the different guards that are available in Angular. Okay, so can you give a practical example use case of an unauthenticated user trying to access our application? So which guard you will be using in your application? Okay, yeah, so out of the 5 guards that I have mentioned, so we can use the can activate guard. So this can activate guard actually decides whether a route needs to be activated, which means that whether we can actually render a component or not. So basically we will be using can activate guard to check if the user has logged in or if the user has any permission to access that particular route. So for unauthenticated users, I will be going ahead with the can activate guard. Okay. So can you please explain, there is another route, right? Can activate child. So what is the difference between can activate and can activate child? Okay, yeah, so there are two different types of can activate. One is the can activate guard, and the other one is the can activate child guard. The purpose of both the routes are same, but the major difference is that when we apply can activate to a particular route, and if the particular route is having child routes, so all those routes will be guarded by using the can activate on the parent. So the user would be restricted if it is an unauthenticated user and we are using that can activate guard. So the parent as well as the child root gets protected, the guarded because of the usage of can activate. But say for example we want to guard only the give guard only to the child roots and not to the parent. The parent root should be allowed and the child root should be prevented. So in that case actually we can go for the can activate child guard. So in that scenario we will be using can activate child guard when we need to protect the roots of the child and we have to allow the parent guard. In that case we can use the can activate child. Okay, what is can deactivate guard, and can you explain any practical scenario where we will be implementing this can deactivate guard? Yeah, sure. So can deactivate guard would be used in scenarios where the user wants to navigate from one particular route to another route. So during that time, as a validation, so you can implement the can deactivate route. By this, what I mean is that one practical implementation scenario for can deactivate guard is I am having one particular form. Okay, so in this particular form, I have started filling the details in the form, and I have not saved this particular data anywhere. So unknowingly or unintentionally, I have clicked on other portion of the other area of the application where it is actually redirecting me to another particular route. So I don't want that to happen. Actually, I want to get a confirmation whether you want to move away from this particular page to another page. So for that, I can use the I can implement the can deactivate. So it would prevent the user from moving from one route to another route unintentionally. So it will prompt a confirmation window would be there. Are you sure you want to move, stay on this page or move away to the new page? That so for that case, actually I will be going ahead with the can deactivate guard. Okay. Can you please explain why we are actually using Angular resolve guard? Okay. Yeah. So the resolve guard, so that will actually help us to load required data before we navigate to a route. So by this, what I meant is like so whenever we are actually navigating to a route, Angular will actually rendering that particular component. Once the component is rendered, then it will be actually sending an HTTP request to the API to fetch data, and it will be then displaying to the user. So sometimes there can be a scenario like the component has been rendered, but we are waiting for the data, and it will be showing an empty. So say for example, I am having a table or data that needs to be fetched from backend server. So that will be showing as an empty data. So we can actually remove that using a loading indicator, but there are some performance issues related, because if it takes some time, then it will be user will be prompted with that loading indicator for a long time. So instead of this loading indicator, before we navigate to this particular route, we can actually use the resolve guard. So the resolve guard will actually make sure that the data is available. Then only the user needs to be routed to this particular route. So the resolve guard will be fetching that data in a prefetched manner. Like it will be the data would be fetched, and then it will be actually navigating to that route. So the user need not wait. So once the component is rendered, along with that, the user is having that data. So along with the rendering, the user would be able to display, user would be able to view the data. So for that purpose, we will be using the resolve guard. Okay. Can you please explain what is can load guard? So we have seen other guards, right? So now can you please explain in what scenarios we will be using, what is a can load guard, and in what scenarios we will be using that? So can load guard basically is used to prevent loading that particular lazy loaded module. So in Angular we have the lazy loading feature. So if you want to say that this particular lazy loaded child can be loaded or not, so that is being decided by the can load guard. So so what we can the practical scenario is if you don't want that any unauthorized user to navigate to any of the routes that is available in the module. So and also the user need not see what is there in that source code of that module. So in that case, actually we can use the can load guard. Okay. So we can wrap this particular session for today. So there are many other concepts that needs to be discussed. So how you will be implementing all these guards. So that is that we can cover in the upcoming sessions. So it was a great time. So thanks a lot for your time, and all the best. Hi, hope you're doing well. Let's get started. Can you please explain the default loading strategy of Angular? Yeah, sure. Yeah, so by default Angular modules are loaded eagerly. So by this what I mean is that as soon as we hit the application URL and the application loads, so all the ng modules that is used in our application, so that gets loaded. So whether it is required or not, that all the modules would be loaded. So that is the default loading strategy in Angular. Okay. So do you think that this following this eagerly loaded pattern would be good enough for a good application, for a larger application? Okay. So no, for larger application, when there are many routes and there are many modules and there are many child modules, so then always it is considered in Angular also provide different other types of loading apart from this eagerly loading. The first one we can say about when there are many routes and it's a large application, then always we can use a lazy loading concept. By lazy loading, what I mean is that whenever the user wants to visit one particular page, so if I have a application, a school application, and if the teacher wants to view the students list, so then the teacher has to go to the students page. So that is only when it is required. So during that time we can actually lazy load that particular students module, and by this way actually when the initial application load, we can actually improve the performance. So we can implement the lazy loading concept. And there might be other scenarios where actually few of the data that needs to be populated while the application loads. So for that actually we can use the another loading strategy that Angular provides, that is the preloading strategy. We can load the content we can actually fetch the content, prefetch the content before the application loads. So those by using these two concepts like preloading and the lazy loading, we can improve the performance of our application by lots. Okay, that's great. So can you please explain how eagerly loaded module, that is which is the default behavior in Angular, how it works in your current application that you are showing in the screen? Yeah, sure. So as you can see here, I have an app component. In this app component HTML, I am having 3 buttons. So one button will be redirecting to the teacher route, and in the second button it will be redirecting to the student route, and I am having a third button which will be redirecting to the home page. So to redirect this route, I am using the router link attribute, and I am creating a separate app routing module. In the app routing module, what I am doing is I am configuring the paths of the route that I have mentioned before. So I am having a path for the student which is actually loading the student component. I am also similarly I am having a teacher component, teacher path. It will be loading the teacher component, and in the teacher component and student component, I am actually console student component is called or not. So I am opening the console, and this is an eagerly loaded module example, and this app routing module I will be calling in the app module. In the app module you can see app routing module is called. So now once the user is hitting the teacher button, so the teacher component is called, and once the user clicks on the student component is called, and home, it will be redirecting to the home. So why we are calling it as eagerly loaded module is because in the app module itself actually we are declaring all the components. So this will be loaded when the application loads for the first time, when the app module is bootstrapped. So it along with the app components, all the declarations whatever is mentioned over there, so that also gets loaded. So student component and teacher component, everything will be loaded on the initial load itself. So that is how eagerly loaded module works in Angular. Okay, so can you please explain what is lazy loaded module and how we will be implementing lazy loaded module? Okay, so for implementing lazy loaded feature in Angular, so we can actually remove it from the app component. So when the app module is getting bootstrapped, it will be actually bootstrapping only the required app component and hello component in this case. So apart from that, we can remove all the other things. So then we have the app routing module as it is. Then in the app routing module, so we will not be configuring it as a component. So rather than we will be providing the load children property in Angular, which will be written inside like an arrow function. So it will be written inside an arrow function. So we need to import the module that we require, right? So for that we will be actually putting so first is the student. So it has to go to the student folder and take the student routing module. Okay, so routing student routing dot, that is the module file, right? So we have to refer to that, and then that is like a promise. So dot then, so once it is loaded, then you have to mention it as s dot y, which is the corresponding module. So in this case actually it is a student routing module. So like this we will be implementing the load children property, right? So this means that that will be loaded only when the user hits the this particular module will be loaded only when the user hits this particular path. Okay, so that is the student path. So here in this case it will be teacher. Okay, and it will be like so it will be okay. So like we have implemented this so this components import can be removed. So we have imported the root. So in the student routing module, what we will do is, so we have to configure the path, which so it will be like first it will be an empty path because we have already configured student in the app routing module. So here it will be like a path. So everything is as it is. So student routing module, and we have the path for this one. Similarly, we have this teacher routing module. So here also it has to point it to the teacher component. So teacher component and student component will be loaded only when the user hits this particular paths, student and teacher path, and all this module and all those services. Right now it is a small module, right? But in larger application it will be like there will be services and other components, child components and everything. So it will be for a larger application, this lazy loading feature increases the performance of the application a lot. So now if you hit the teacher component and student component, it has to work the same way. So let it load. Okay, sometimes this tag splits. Okay, so now it is working. So you can see here, right? So it works the same way, okay, as it was working previously for the how it was working for the eagerly loaded module. So in this case the performance will be improved a lot. So right now you would not be able to recognize it because it is a small module and only one component in it. But in an actual scenario, an actual application, there might be many components, many child components. So you would be able to experience the lazy loading feature in Angular. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so then can you please explain what is the real idea behind the preloading modules and how you have implemented preloading in your application? Okay, so preloading feature that is provided by Angular is intended to load component or modules in the background. That means along with the application load, the preloaded the modules would be preloaded, and that will be like it would not be useful for the initial application load, but later on we are sure that the application, the user would be using those data. So that will be like a huge data. So in the background itself that is getting loaded, but it should not affect the application performance as well. So that is the way. So by preloading, what it means is that we can actually wait for the users need not wait for the data to download when they actually activate a particular route, because it might be a huge data or a large data. So along with the initial application load, we will be fetching that data, and as soon as the user hits that particular route, so that data will be visible for the users. So that is the real purpose of preloading. And there is an in Angular router provides a preload all modules. So for all the lazy modules, if we need to enable preloading, then we have to import that preload all modules, and so that will make sure that all the lazy loaded modules would be preloaded along with the application load. Okay, so yeah, that's what I was looking for. So what I will do is I will be wrapping up this particular session for today. So we will be looking into the more advanced concept of how the preloading is implemented, and all this will cover in the other session. So it was a great talking to you. All the best.
Hi. So let's get started. So you're comfortable with Angular, right? So we can start with Angular. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Correct. We can start with Angular. Okay. Can you please briefly explain about the Angular lifecycle hooks? Yeah, so in Angular, when we create a component, Angular actually runs into an lifecycle hook. So it starts with ng on changes, and then we have ng on init, ng to check, ng after content init, ng after content checked, ng after view init, ng after view checked, and ng on destroy. Okay. Can you please explain in bit detail about the lifecycle hooks, why, how, and when this lifecycle hooks gets created? Yeah, sure, yeah. So ng on changes, it gets triggered when we create a component. When we create a component, ng on changes gets triggered when if there are any input bound properties. We use input bound properties for a parent and a child. So when we have that input bound properties for detecting those changes when the value is set to that input and when it is getting altered, so all those changes will get triggered in the ng on changes. And post the input bound properties are getting that values are getting reflected or initialized, we have the ng on init. In the ng on init, all the initialization and all the API call and everything can be called over here. So here the component has been created. So all the initialization logic will be getting into the ng on init. Then we have the ng to check. So this lifecycle hook is primarily intended to make sure that all the changes that Angular itself cannot detect. So all those changes that can be which Angular is not able to detect. So those logics can be incorporated in the ng to check, and this runs once after ng on init, and then for every change detection this lifecycle hook runs. Then we have the ng after content init. We have in Angular we have like a content projection pattern is there, or a method is there, so we can actually project an HTML content in child component from the parent. So that all those content initial after the content projection, so this content initialization we can actually create get the methods, and also those logics can be written in the ng after content init. And once the content is initialized, then we can have the ng after content checked. So this also after every content initialization, it actually for every change detection in the content, so this particular lifecycle hook is called, and after every ng to check also this ng after content checked gets called. Then we have the ng after view init. So after the content has been projected, then we have the view. So the view has to be there is a view child properties in Angular, so we can actually reference to the template and we can have that interaction. So those logics will be written within the ng after view init. And similar to ng after content check, we have this ng after view check. So these are the lifecycle hooks. Then we have the ng on destroy. Like if we are actually moving away from this particular component to another component, then we will be called this ng on destroy will be triggered, and basically all the subscriptions and all those things logics that we have written over in the component, so those that will be unsubscribed in the ng on destroy, so that we can actually prevent the memory leakage. So that is regarding the Angular lifecycle hooks. Okay, it's great. Okay, so if we are in the component, we do not have any input bound property, then do the ng on changes even get triggered? No, no. Once we are having this ng on changes, so that gets triggered only when there is an input bound property. If there are no input bound properties in that particular component, then there is no that ng on changes will not be triggered. Are you sure? Yeah, I am sure about that. Okay. Okay, good. So we have a constructor, right? Constructor in a component. We are a constructor. We are actually writing. So what is that for? What are things that goes inside a constructor? Yeah. So in constructor, actually, we will be injecting one in a particular component. So we have so many dependencies like other services. We need to call the API. So that logic will be written within the services. So all those logic regarding the services, and also we need to inject the dependency. Okay, so you have your code open over here, right? So can you please show me how we will be creating a service through Angular CLI? Okay, so basically the command that I would be using is ggcs test service. Okay, yeah, this is the command that I would be using for generating the service, and G for generate, and S for service, and service name. Okay, so once you create this particular service, what is the decorator? Like in this screen, you are showing the add component decorator, right? So would that be the same with service? Okay, yeah, no. That service would be decorated with add injectable. So Angular core is actually providing this at injectable decorator for injecting this particular service. So we have like so what we are primarily doing is by decorating a class with an injectable, so we can make sure that this is part to be this is a service that needs to be injected into the Angular. Okay, great. Okay, so now so this is provided by Angular core. Okay, yeah, got it. So now so how this particular service, this test service, how can you actually take into within this this app component is depending on this particular test service. So how will you inject within this particular service? Okay, so one thing we can do is we can actually go into app module, and in app module we will be having a provider. Okay, we have a provider array. So here we can provide a test service, so it can service, okay, test service. So here this, so it would be available over here, and in the constructor what we will do is we will be injecting that test service. Okay, and we can, if the test service is having sorry, yeah, no problem. Yeah, so if the test service is having one particular method, so okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, good. So this test service, so in net injectable you are actually providing there is a provided in feature, right? So that is not been implemented over here. So what is that for? Yeah, so yeah, got it. So here we have a provided in property. So if it is like root, so that means this is available throughout our application from the root module. Okay, so this is one feature, and if I'm actually having one particular value over here, public, so I'm having a test variable. So I'm actually trying to console that test service dot test, so I can access over here, and the value should be populated. So once I am providing that in the root module, I can actually remove from here. Okay. Still it should run fine because I have provided in the root module. Okay. So if I remove this particular value, if I commented it out, there is an error. Provided in is not assignable to. So if I remove this, so there is an injector, no provider. So in that case, we need to provide that in the ng module. So this will work fine. That is the use of Angular service. Okay, great. Okay, that is great. So now that with that actually we are okay. So you are good with the Angular services, right? So okay, that is great. How you have shown that case of provided in. Okay, now so you mentioned about ng content, content projection in the Angular lifecycle hook. So in the content lifecycle hook, there is a concept of multi-slot and single slot. Have you heard about that? Yeah. So I have heard about that. So in content projection, we can actually project content from the parent to the child, that from a single source or from the multi-source. So if you want to project it from multi-source, then we will be decorating that with the select attribute. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Got it. So can you please explain me how you will be, as you have the code opened, right? So how you will be actually writing? I don't want the exact thing, but how you will be writing that syntax. If you can provide that, it would be great. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So here we can actually go with. So we will be in the child. We will be having this particular selector, and so in the parent actually we will be calling that particular component selector we will be having. So this is the component selector. So if it is then we will be calling that, and within that we can actually project that content. Okay, this is for single source. If I have multi source, then what I will do is ng content, mm, and it was that, and inside this ng content there is a select attribute. So here I will be providing like first content to be projected. So this way I can make sure that this particular content will be getting projected. So that is the use of content projection as a multi-source. Okay, good. That is what I was expecting. Uh, okay, so as we discussed earlier, so for the next sessions in JavaScript, CSS and HTML, we will cover in the next interview session. So be prepared for that. Uh, thanks a lot for your time. It was great talking with you.